we get on this show, it's time for her to have her moment.
You think he has something to say?
Oh, yeah.
Protect the man.
He's agreeing with us.
Yes, indeed. She is agreeing with you, James. Okay.
I'm sorry.
She is agreeing.
Don't want Peter on me.
No, not at all.
Looks like we're on.
We're on.
Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Seven Cities Forum. Welcome to Portsmouth Coffee Talk, evening edition. And we're here. My name is James Slim Overton. I'm here with my co-hosts, Leah Drake-Stitt and Thomas, the Colonel Chapman. How you doing, co-host?
To you, sir.
All right. Yeah.
How's everything going?
Everything is wonderful.
Every day is a good day, and especially when we have special guests like we have today to share some knowledge and share some information that we feel is very important. It's what we're all about here on Portsmouth Coffee Talk. So first, but before we get started, the Colonel will do his disclaimer, and then Leah will give us a small introduction of our guest today.
Okay, for those folks that are out there in electron land, the views stated on this program are the host and the guests, and nobody else. These are our personal views or opinions, and so let's just let her rock and roll.
You know, before I introduce Dr. Fairfax, something just popped up on my screen. One of my young men from my youth group, I have a youth group called Sankofa, and today was his first day in classes at Norfolk State. It's giving me chills. His grandmother just sent over his picture. He's in his suit. He's looking so handsome. I am so proud of him. Devontae, I am just so proud of you, and keep it up. Keep it up, Devontae. Keep it up. Okay, I'm sorry. I had to go there because it just popped up. So, Dr. Fairfax, Dr. Colita Fairfax. And Dr. Fairfax, your resume is so extensive. It was hard for me to even extract little pieces of it so that we wouldn't be here the whole hour just reading your resume. Okay.
No need to read it.
Well, no, we do have to give a few facts out there. Some facts that the public need to hear. But Dr. Colita Nicole Fairfax is a professor at the Robert C. Nussbaum Honors College, senior faculty fellow, an inaugural faculty scholar in the Center for African American Public Policy at Norfolk State University. She has written several articles, reviews, chapters, and in the following books: Hampton, Virginia, Timeless History and Service, the Iota Omega Chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, 1922 to Our Time. She's edited 2 books: Social Work, Marriage and Ethnicity, Policy and Practice, and the African Experience in the Colonial American. To my heart. And essays on the 1619 arrival and legacy of slavery. It's a good thing you're not in Florida or Texas, because you'd be banned about right now. Okay, Dr. Fairfax earned her doctorate of philosophy and the Master of Arts in African American Studies from Temple University, Master of Social Work from Rutgers University, and a Bachelor of Social Work from Howard University. As a professor, Professor Fairfax forcefully engaged students to think critically about history and social conditions, best cultural community practice, and the impact of social policy upon the African American community in the HBCU spirit of excellence and virtuosity. A specialty of her scholarship involves developing womenistic historiographies about African American social reformers in the state of Virginia. Her knowledge production unearthed data about Maggie Lena Walker. Richmond, Virginia, folks, go to her home. Ada Barber, right here from Portsmouth, people. Ada Barber, Virginia Randolph, and I had the pleasure of knowing Mrs. Vivian Carter Mason. Wow. Oh my goodness. Let me tell you, what a joy. As well as to know Miss Willia Jones Dale. I had the opportunity of knowing both of these ladies. And Janie Porter Barrett and Mary Peake. You know, she's a leader in the Commonwealth of Virginia with the 2019 recognition of the landing of African people and at Point Comfort, present day Hampton. That's Hampton.
Virginia, where
Yeah,
Fort Monroe is located.
Fort Monroe. Okay,
Yeah.
and it goes on and on. But one thing that also hit me is, and I had the pleasure of working with this lady, and the late Dr. Mary Christian,
Oh,
and co-founder of the Barrett Peak Heritage Foundation, tasked with restoring the state headquarters of the Virginia Federation of Colored Women's Club, founded in 1907, and preserving African American historical cemeteries in Hampton. It goes on and on. Historical markers, all kinds of things involving us as a people and the restoration of that information, so we have it for those who are coming behind us. Dr. Fairfax, I want to say welcome, welcome, welcome to Portsmouth Coffee Talk. We're just so happy to have you here. And I tell you, my heart is just overflowing because I can't wait to talk about these subjects that we have here on today. So once again, I want to say welcome. Welcome to Portsmouth Coffee Talk. James,
I'm so grateful to
you.
be here. And I love Portsmouth. I've got to mention kudos to my elder historian, May Breckenridge Hayward. I've got to mention her because I follow her and she has mentored and developed me. All those women who you read about is a part of my intellectual genealogical trek. So thank you so much.
And May Breckenridge is our historian at IC Norfolk High School. So
that's right.
She's contributed a lot to the Portsmouth community and Virginia as a whole, really.
Yeah. She is a heavyweight.
She really is.
She is a heavyweight and a consummate elder. And shameless plug, she was in college with my mother. So
okay, all right.
I love Miss May.
Me too. Me too.
Well, Dr. Fairfax, we're glad you're here. And we mentioned the book earlier, and I ordered the book, and it should have arrived yesterday, but it came today. So I hadn't had a chance to read it, but I sort of scanned through it a little bit. Excellent book. You actually edited the book because it's full of essays by other people, and you have some in here as well. And so I can't wait to read it and go through it, but I encourage other people to. It's been out since what, 2021?
Yes, sir. It has.
Oh, okay. So I encourage people to check this out. I don't know if I can get
James, we can't see it that well. Read the cover, please.
The cover is The African Experience in Colonial Virginia, Essays on the 1619th Arrival and Legacy of Slavery.
Amen.
So we'll probably put it in, on our page so people can
good.
Where to go.
And James, as you say that, Dr. Fairfax, just a footnote, I took my youth group many years ago, to Colonial Williamsburg. And while we were on the tour, one of my kids asked, well, what about the freed blacks in Williamsburg? Why don't you all show about these blacks that were in Williamsburg? And actually we were asked to exit from the tour. And I had to go to get Dr. Tommy Bozier, who was at Norfolk State, to tell him about the fact that we were asked to leave the tour because they were questioning, because they had learned in the group about the freed blacks in Williamsburg and in Virginia. And they wanted to know why were they not depicted there as opposed to the housekeeper and those individuals of that nature. I just had to share that with you.
And then during those times, a lot of focus was geared towards Jamestown and Williamsburg.
Exactly.
And not Hampton, where,
exactly.
we'll talk about that. But, Doctor, I saw a conversation you had with Dr. Trina Coleman from Hampton University. I believe she's a professor there, and she has a radio program, HBCU radio program. This is about 2 years ago, but I think it's relevant for what we're going to discuss today. And her show is called Beyond the Classroom. And you had a extensive conversation with her, starting from 1619, and it sort of combined it into where we are today as African American communities and as a race. And one of the things you said, I'm going to paraphrase here, you said we must stay in the moment to keep us connected to our past.
Amen.
And so, and before you get started, I saw in your introduction in the book, you quoted Langston Hughes, I've known rivers ancient as the world and older than the flow of human blood in the veins.
Amen.
Why did you pick that to start your introduction in this book? We'll go from there.
So I believe it's important that we always, as a people, start history off with the beginning. And the beginning is never with enslavement.
Exactly.
The beginning is with who we are as the original ancient people on the planet, as African people. I had a professor once tell us, if you start your history with slavery, everything else looks like progress.
Amen.
So then you think that we've arrived, but it's an illusion. So if you start our history, and if you start your understanding of knowing and your of coming to terms with your beliefs, your traditions, your philosophies, it must start on the motherland, in the continent. And Mr. Hughes's poem resonated with me to help to teach our people, instruct our people to begin to look to Africa and to begin to think about themselves as the original people on the planet, not necessarily as people only in America or only in the Caribbean or only in South America, but as the original people on the planet, and that the Ma'afa or enslavement was an interruption. So how then do we understand the need to prioritize the reclaiming of our culture, the reclaiming of our social systems, the reclaiming of healing and restoration? And how do we do that kind of work where you've got to think about yourself very differently? And so that's a part of the reason why that poem resonated with me, Mr. Overton.
So as you go, you were part of the committee, sort of bringing to light or commemorizing the landing of the slaves in Hampton. Fort, what was it?
At Fort Monroe,
Fort Monroe. My
Preservation.
mind was on Fort
Yeah.
Nelson. That was going
Yeah.
to come out of my mouth. Fort
Yeah.
Monroe.
Fort Monroe.
Yeah.
And so, and I think you were. It was a long period leading up to that, getting prepared for that. So this was not celebrating, but bringing to light
Commemorating.
400 years of
Yeah.
since from 1619 to 2019. So tell us how that process came about, and where'd you go going forward after you got it all together and then you had the ceremony. After that, where did we go?
So that was a process. So uh there was so let me bridge a bit.
Mm,
So 1619 is used as the year where African people entered into uh, the colony of Virginia, and John Henry Clark also says, well, we see the beginning of plantation capitalism. We see the beginning of plantation capitalism in a way that the world has never known about, involving perpetual human bondage, where an economic institution would flourish and would grow because of the institution of human bondage. I do want our listeners to be clear that we should never understand African people only within the context of enslavement.
Exactly.
That, when you only think about African people in the context of enslavement, you miss millennia of history.
Yes.
Where we were originators and inventors and thinkers and creators and dominated in every kind of field known to man. And also, I think it's dangerous if when we consider North America and South America, that again, we can only in our minds conceptualize Africans as enslaved. When you consider 1565, the creation of Fort St. Augustine in Florida, where we find the African people were there. But African people were also in South America, and there are settlements in South America that show African people explored. There are architectural artifacts, archaeological evidence to show the presence of African people. And I would encourage your readers to read a wonderful book by Ivan Van Sertima, They Came Before Columbus, because in that book, a beautiful historian, he's able to really lay out prolifically where African people were in the world. So I think it's important that there's a caveat, right, to where we're not saying that anything African started in 1619. but that 1619 is the entrance where we see the development of America, because Virginia was a colony. Florida wasn't a colony yet in 1565, but Virginia was a colony in 1619. And my senior colleague, Dr. Cassandra Newby Alexander, makes that point very clear. So, I tried to find ways to communicate that to the officials with the city of Hampton, and they just really didn't get it, because you got to understand, in the European imagination, African people are passive actors. We are not equal actors. We are not creating change. We are passive actors in their theater. And so it was important for them to only talk about 1619 with regards to the enslavement of African people. Now, the other thing that was happening, Mr. Overton, is that while Colonel Claude Van III and I co-chaired the City of Hampton Commemorative Commission in 20, and we started actually in 2016, moved our way up. The state of Virginia, the Commonwealth of Virginia, created what they called American Evolution. And this American Evolution was a commission that was tasked to articulate the development of democracy. So their position was they didn't really want to highlight or keep the focus on our ancestors, but to talk about how all of even the quote unquote bad parts have created this beautiful democracy. And there were 4 subcommittees. The development of the House of Burgesses, 1619, the arrival of white women to the colony, 1620, the landing of African people at Point Comfort, 1619, and then this really weird phenomena, the first Thanksgiving at Berkeley Plantation. So it was a very interesting dynamic to have the state try to spin it, and they had the resources to do that. So I was on the African Arrival Committee of the State Commission, which was co-chaired by Dr. Cassandra Newby Alexander. So you had these 2 entities that held the resources, that was about the creating this 400th recognition moment. And it involved many entities, many different points of view, Mr. Overton. And at times, many times, there was a lot of tension, because what Colonel Van and I wanted, and our commission wanted, was to develop something very similar to what the National Council of Negro Women would do under legendary Dorothy Wright. And then I don't know if you all remember the Black Family Reunion that they had every summer. Our thing was, listen, this should be that kind of event where people are coming to Fort Monroe, where there are discussions about social conditions with solutions. But yet there is a celebration of who we are. Right, that we are here, we have survived. And where we're going to go from here. We wanted something of that magnitude, and they could not handle that, nor did they want to support that.
You know, it's unfortunate you had to push back like that, especially, and it's also fortunate you had families like the Tucker family that kept records and made it possible, because John Rolfe, the journal he kept, he didn't include any African American slaves or in some cases the women and other people that were non-white, well, even the white women. But anyway, so he didn't include any of that, and that would have been lost. But thank God we had people like you that did the digging, or the commission that did the digging, and there was records, you know, from those families, from those people.
And the Tucker family has been
beautiful. Tucker family, yeah.
They've been beautiful, and they are beautiful people.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know Veranda. Yeah.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Well, so the other piece I want to share with you is that the city of Hampton in 2010, the city of Hampton celebrated 400 years. So the city of Hampton had a commission, and I was a part of that commission. I was a part of a legacy commission where we made sure there were city markers erected to note historical places. We call them heritage markers in Hampton. I live in Hampton. But we also created, we had funding for a statue to create a tripartite cultural statue that still sits on Settlers Landing Road. So we have an Englishman, we have a statue of a Kickatan, which was the group of people who were inhabiting the land where Hampton now sits, but they were the Kickatan people, and then the African, and that these were three cultures that merged into the creation and development of what would become Hampton. That was also push-pull because I was very particular with the way in which the African statue should be depicted. And one depiction had been suggested of a Black man on his knees looking up, and I thought I was going to flip the table in the meeting.
I'm surprised you didn't flip it.
I just said, "Oh, absolutely not. I don't even know why you all brought this here. You should know better. You should have read about me. We're not even going to do this." And so I did my research, and I did suggest having an African man depicted in either a robe or a long cloth, because that was some of the way in which our men are dressed. I wanted something very traditional. I got a little close to that, but the man is standing, he's looking out into the sea. He kind of is leaning on a skit, which is a tool that was used to cut wheat. But I imagine he's looking back home.
Right.
And so I pushed for that. And so Mr. Overton, that was a part of how Hampton got introduced to Colita Fairfax.
Yes.
One thing I like to highlight or to say is, for the viewers out there, some of them are wondering, why is this important?
Okay.
And this is a question that this is nationwide. And so when we look at the discussions of race and of slavery and our American history, and we talk about American history, Black America history, and slavery was a piece of it. And I guess when the 1619 Project was developed and go on and was trying to rise, you had a lot of forces that was against it. And I like to, as I'm thinking through this, I look at, we were talking about the high schools. And when President George Bush was, when the president assumed their presidency, they passed with Senator Kennedy, they leave all the children left behind.
Leave all the children behind, Colonel. Leave them all behind.
Leave them all behind. Because that was the first advent of teaching towards the SOL or a test. And then so all the critical thinking was out. Social studies went out, our fine arts went out, and all the things that in history was minimized, so we wouldn't talk about that, which also we didn't want to talk about slavery and some of those uncomfortable things in our nation's history, which when you fast forward a couple elections after that, the rise of President Obama. But with him, there rose up the Tea Party, and and so that highlighted all the pin up what I call racial animus. It was legalized and it was just like thrown out there. And then so the Tea Party actually in truth morphed into the modern
Republican Party.
The Republican Party. And now they're the modern Confederacy of today. And you see what's happening. And then with that, they were given a license by our first, he's not really our first racist president, but he was probably our second.
I saw that side eye. I saw that mama side eye there.
So with him,
first.
Well, let me go back. He was the first modern racist president. And so he allowed it to flourish and to go on. And now, you know, you can't discuss across there. You got in Florida and Texas, you can't discuss anything that makes people uncomfortable, or white children uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just another wedge issue to get people up to vote. Doesn't mean anything, but it brings people to the polls so they can assume power. And so I just had to get that off my chest. We have to know our history.
Yeah.
Because if we don't know our history, then we will repeat the mistake of yesterday. And that same issue of slavery is about personal rights.
Mm-hmm.
And you just saw where this installed Supreme Court took away 50 years of women's rights.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just with a straight up pen, not because it was legal, because it was politics. And what is next? That is the question. What is next? What are they going to do to you? For all those young people walking around with you, thinking that you are free, you are not free. You're only one election away from going backwards to the 40s and the 50s, exactly what the modern Confederacy wants. And so that might be deep for some, but I will lay out the case.
But Colonel, you know, that goes to the fact that I really commend Dr. Fairfax.
Yes.
I was speaking to her earlier about the fact that Cheryl Wilkes came on yesterday, and her topic was what the what?
Yes. Yes.
And it was based upon the fact they did a survey,
Mm-hmm.
and the only two African Americans who could be identified was Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King.
Mm-hmm.
Only event was the march on Washington, and there was one other event which I don't even recall now. But the fact of the matter is that our children have been stripped of their history, and
Yes.
many of them don't want to know their history, which is even a sadder thing. They
Because
don't want to know.
SOL. Why should they know it? Because it's not on their test. That's what they're being told.
But we got to get to the point, and I know she's in college. She's on the college level, trying to teach these young people about what social justice is, who paved the way for them. But the response is not something that we think that we should receive, because that wasn't just people of the white community who didn't know who those individuals were. They were African Americans who did not know, and that's a sad statement on us as a people.
Well, you know what, Leah, that is a sad state, because one, they have been victims of policies. When you locked in the Leave All the Children's Left Behind Act, it locked in the policy about non-educating folks. So now we have to celebrate Dr. Fairfax and her compadres' work of bringing history back to the forefront, so we'll know what our history is.
Yeah.
And Dr. Fairfax, I just wanted to wait a minute, Aaliyah. I just wanted to, since that was brought up, I just wanted to, so she can kind of segue into this too, because you brought up the idea of the students not wanting to learn history, and as she's on the college level, and she talks a lot about, the state of our HBCUs. How are the students on our HBCU campuses? How are they accepting that they have to know the history forward and backwards? How are they accepting that? Is it a struggle for professors like yourself, or is it something that they are embracing?
So I have had incredible success with the history that I teach, and I teach history and policy. And I've had incredible success because what I've done is presented the evidence to students historically. So history then doesn't just only become an iteration of having to remember years and facts.
Right.
It becomes personal in that you are forced to have to really consider where you are as a historical person, as a historical being. And so connecting them with that, and then challenging them with certain questions about what do you think government has done? What do you think happened after 1865, the Civil War? Well, okay, fine, that's too far for you. Well, name one policy today, social policy that benefits. So being able to challenge them, and then asking them, so what policy passed when your grandparents were living that really benefited them? Because whatever our grandparents experienced, we see it in family. So connecting them in a cultural way has yielded great success, Mr. Overton. It has. One of the things that we did do, the 2019 City of Hampton Commission, is we had 2 summer teachers institutes. In 2018 and 2019, our commission sponsored a summer institute where teachers, K through 12 teachers in the city of Hampton, were able to come, and for 4 days, they learned about 1619, not just the landing, the August 1619 landing, but they learned, we had, for example, Chief Red Hawk to come and lecture about the Cherwin-Haka Native people and how they were impacted. Because I wanted to start at the beginning. And at the beginning, if you talk about anything about America, you got to talk about Native people.
Exactly.
And we had other scholars. So teachers were exposed to scholars. We had Dr. Michael Hughley of ODU talk about the impact of law in history, the impact of law upon Black people. And we had Dr. Newby Alexander come. And then we had a master teacher, Dr. June Montgomery, who retired from the School of Ed at NSU, but she was able to talk about how you create lesson plans that incorporates that. I also provided a lecture on how to teach historical empathy, which is not taught. So we were hoping that the City of Hampton schools would pick up the institute, institutionalize it, make it a part of their teacher development, but then COVID hit in 2020 and we haven't heard from them since. But the idea was for the City of Hampton to institutionalize this kind of K through 12 teacher institute. So, okay, so fast forward to now we have this very interesting governor.
Yeah, thank you. Yes.
And this is another conversation, but had the Democrats done some different things, we wouldn't be in this position.
Exactly.
So I'm laying all of this at the feet of the Virginia Democrats. That's another conversation. So we have this governor who is walking the party line, and what we really see, you all, is not a new sense of anti-Blackness. It is a continuation, open face, anti-Black stance in everything. Now, let's be clear. America has always been a racist, racial country. The first 16 U.S. presidents owned people, held people in bondage. So that, we've had people with the bully pulpit who actively participated, abused, brutalized, grew rich, keeping people in human bondage. We have had U.S. presidents to wage an incredible, brutal war upon Native people, violently moving them from their lands. We have had U.S. presidents to sponsor race-based policy. People talk about, we shouldn't have policies that benefit certain people, and they're losing their minds because a little bit of student debt has now been eliminated by President Biden. Well, check this, under President Abraham Lincoln, there was the Homestead Act.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
1864, where white settlers could claim a land free.
Just take it. Free. Just take it and move on.
Yeah. We have had, even after the Civil War, 1865, the Freedmen's Bureau was created, where every Black person was supposed to receive 40 acres and a mule. That didn't happen. But you know what did happen? White owners of people were, quote unquote, reimbursed for their economic loss.
Exactly.
You fast forward doing Reconstruction, when Black people held certain city, county, municipal offices, they were chased out on a rail. And there was no government to come in and intervene and save them. Property damage, property loss. Okay, fine. You still not a believer? We can go into the century we were all born in. And look at the continued experience of lynching, the continued experience of having our communities taken. You look at urban renewal policy of the 50s and the 60s, what sociologists call Negro removal.
Thank you. That's exactly what it was.
That's exactly what it was. Removing us from land, from property. These are homes that the men in our family purchased, bought, created, built. The businesses that we had. And when we're moved, you can never recoup from that. And the money that they gave, the government gave, was absolutely paltry. And then we move into the 70s, where the child support enforcement program, which we
killed the family structure.
Right, absolutely. Child support and the way in which public welfare has been utilized to undermine poor Black family life. You couple that with drug proliferation, you couple that with mass incarceration. And so when I put it to my students that way, and then I ask the question, now tell me again, what social policy ever benefited your community? They have no answer for me. So I think that we have to revisit how history is taught. And the way in which I've just laid it out is exactly the way history was taught in the segregated school system.
Exactly.
We were the center. We were at the center. And then what was also taught, and what HBCUs do incredibly well, is to teach that resistance posture.
Exactly.
So, I told my students today, listen, you ever heard the elders use the term, I woke up clothed in my right mind?
Clothed in my right mind.
What do you think that's about? What do you think that's about?
Exactly.
That's about you're maintaining. God has allowed you to maintain your sanity in the midst of this anti-Blackness. Because what I explained is the human bondage means cultural degradation. It means an erasure or an elimination or a corruption of your identity. It also corrupts your identity and relationship to one another. So if you are there to serve the community, your people are not just your clients, they're your constituents.
Exactly.
They are your family. So your relationship with each other was corrupted during enslavement. So part of the challenge then is to get them to understand how to look at themselves differently and how to look at one another different. And to come to the reality that, okay, we live in this anti-Black mess, but we ain't got to be crazy like the rest.
Exactly.
We don't have to lose our righteous mind. We don't have to lose our spirituality. We don't have to lose our connection to the divine when we live it right. Because, okay, we see you. We see you. We see you. You're removing our church members from because you want to tear down the projects. We see you. You want to create these bike lanes. Okay, we see you. You want to put more police on the street. Okay, we see you.
Girl, you get
posture, and I think we're missing that.
But Dr. Fairfax, you're just taking me someplace here, because when you look at how Texas and Florida, how they're trying to rewrite history to work for them. When you look at this group, and I just lost it as you were talking, this group is a religious college group that's trying to take over public education. I can't think of the name of it now, and I hope it comes to me before we leave now. Okay. But they're trying to take over, and they want to change the way things really were to make it look good for one set of people and not let any other child feel uncomfortable in the setting. So with this revising of our history, that man out there in Texas, he's written it completely differently as to how these presidents really didn't own slaves, but that they were there just to assist them, to be, a part of their community. So, when the kids see this, if there is no other reason for us to understand why we have to learn our history and why we have to be out there for social justice, look at Texas, look at Florida. And when they're happening in those states, eventually, if we don't do something, it's going to head here as well. And it's heading here, slowly but surely.
The great thing about history is that that what we see today is not the first time it's happened.
Exactly.
It's not. Exactly. So again, we know that during Reconstruction, the daughters of the Confederacy, the daughters of the American Revolution, they erected all of these Confederate statues.
Yes, they did.
They essentially rewrote the narrative of history and the glory of Confederate soldiers, and rewrote that they really won. And so they rewrote history, and that history was taught in schools throughout the 20th century. Now, but what did our elders do? Our elders taught our history in Sunday school.
Amen.
When we would gather
That's
in
right.
communities doing different things, there were historical nuggets that they were teaching us. There were ritual gatherings that we don't even realize. We think we're just going to get something to eat, but we're hearing elders recant local history in a way of explaining and informing who we are. And again, that is the resistance posture that I'm talking about.
Doctor, that's why HBCUs are so important, because regardless of what they try to do on the level below that, with policy and legislation, in our HBCUs, it's professors like yourself. It's all about presentation. The way you present, the importance of knowing that history, and pointing out certain things that they can't ignore, because they are going to be the ones that's going to be out here and fight those people in Florida and Texas. And I like to go back. You mentioned about the monuments. I want to mention how what a significant role you played in taking down that huge Robert E. Lee statue. And just a personal note, when I went to Union, one of the times I went down Monument Row, and we talked early before we came on the show.
Yeah.
Monument Row is on Monument Avenue, and
Monument
full
Avenue,
of statues, and also Arthur Ashe is on that street. Anyway, we talked earlier about the 70s and the man causing this and all that with us, how we thought, and we were seeing our blackness then. And when I rode down that street, it did something to me as a young man, as a young 19-year-old, 18-year-old man, to see these huge statues of honoring people who lost a war. And I majored in history and government, so it really touched me, knowing something about the history and then seeing that, and it sort of took me back, and really got into my blackness a little bit more then as well, because I was already there with the movement of the 70s, but riding down that street did something to me. But you were very instrumental, or very vocal, and very instrumental in taking that thing down, or having that statue being taken down. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, sir. So in 2020, Governor Ralph Northam appointed me to the Historical Statues Commission on the U.S. Capitol, and we're tasked, Senator Louise Lucas chairs that committee, and we're tasked with removing the Robert E. Lee statue in the U.S. Capitol. So we all know that every state has 2 statues in the U.S. Capitol. And so Robert E. Lee was one, George Washington is the other. And so I was blessed to honor the ancestors and nominate the removal of the defender of human bondage.
Yes.
Robert E. Lee from the U.S. Capitol, and he will be replaced by a teenager named Barbara Johns, who led a walkout in her high school in Prince George County, Farmville.
Farmville, that's right.
Yeah. So that is a part of what was happening during the siege on the huge Robert E. Lee statue monument in my hometown of Richmond. And Mr. Overton is absolutely correct. On Monument Avenue, that's why it's called Monument Avenue. Those statues were erected in the late 1800s. Now, the Civil War ended 1865. And most Confederate statues were erected during the period of Reconstruction. So as you rebuild in America, think about it. You're rebuilding America, where you're going to make sure these images
That's planting the seed.
Absolutely.
That's planting the seed. That's right.
That is ideology.
That's right.
Ideology coming to bear. So, and as a child of Richmond, there was always a sense of we were never welcomed there, and if we were there, we were cleaning, we were
Exactly.
doormen, we were working for somebody. My father worked in the branch mansion on Monument Avenue while he was a student at Virginia Union University. So if you were black anywhere in on Monument Avenue, you were working for somebody. You were in a service capacity. So that became a venerated historical district, a venerated historical space of Confederacy, of anti-blackness. That's what I call it. And I think it spoke volumes when young people connected the state ballot murder of George Floyd in Minnesota
How about
with the ideology of the Confederacy, anti-blackness, in my hometown, Richmond. So, Colonel, yeah.
Well, I was just saying, Slim, you talked about celebrating, the when Robert E. Lee's statue went down, talking about celebrating somebody the loss of war. I think when we always talk about this Civil War, we have to talk about those folks in the Confederacy were fighting to destroy our democracy, to break this country apart.
Yes.
And those are the same people from that fast forward now. What I call the Republican Party is basically the modern Confederacy, are trying to break this country apart. And if they get power back,
oh yes,
in the midterms and in Mr. Trump comes out in 24 and gets it back, and they have all three branches, we will be back. We will be in worse shape because he would have learned how to wield power the right, and make things even worse than it was today. And everything will be on the table. So, Dr.
If I can jump, can I add something to that, Colonel? And I know we want to tie into HBCUs, Mr. Overton. I haven't forgotten. So I would say that those defenders of the Confederacy and their spawns, who we see today, today, their idea of democracy is anti-blackness. Their idea of democracy is black subjugation. Their idea of democracy is black inferiority. So I think whenever we're talking about democracy, it means different things to different people. And I think we're not clear about that. An example would be Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney, yes, is on the January 6th commission, but Liz Cheney has voted against everything. Progressive policy that's meaningful to our community. In a democracy, according to Liz Cheney, black people don't exist equally. Black people don't have the same rights and privileges. Black people are not viewed as equal citizens. Black people are not viewed as equal world players. So I do think we've got to really help our people to understand that democracy looks different to different people, and it's defined different. Just like my conceptualization of the supreme being God is black, and so some folks just can't get there. They can't get that. So the incredible importance of having our own educational and socialization institutions, which is what HBCUs are, means that we should not only view HBCUs, Mr. Overton, as degree granting institutions, but as institutions that socialize leagues of leaders to then go back to the community to effectuate change. Now, what I'm struggling with right now with our HBCUs, I will tell you this across the board, my struggle right now, and I can say this, I've been at NSU for 23 years. I'm a product of an HBCU. I grew up on an HBCU campus. I'm not alien to the historical track of HBCUs. But HBCUs have never only been degree granting institutions. We have been institutions that socialize people to then go back to the community and uproot, alleviate, build community. We have been in partnership with community and with agencies and institutions, organizations, and churches to build up community, to continue culture, to continue race pride, to continue the strong spiritual traditions that we have. And so what we're seeing though today is a little bit of a nadir in that, yes, you know, it's sexy right now for rich white folk to give to HBCUs. But yet what I don't see as much as I used to see when I was growing up on the campus of Virginia Union University is the connection that HBCUs should have with community. Where are the connections? Mm-hmm. Where do we see, you know, the synergy? Where do we see certain processes develop? You know, where are the Black businesses? Because students have learned business principles, cooperative economics, and brought them back to the community. You know, where are all of the community development agencies? You know, I tell my students, you're not getting an education to go work in social services. That's government. That's government. You're getting an education in order to develop institutions and community. And that's how you develop people. And I am honestly struggling a bit right now because I don't quite see that.
Exactly.
And, well, you know, the other piece, what I see in the HBCU schools that I think we've fallen back on is my own personal belief is, say, when I went to register, that kid needs to be registered to vote and learn the power of the vote.
Exactly.
And we should have 99% of the folks over there should be registered to vote and be held up to vote each an election, because their own survivals, their own family survivals, and their kids' survivals depend on the power that they have in going to and striking on that little piece of paper and voting. Because when you give that away, you give away everything.
Exactly.
And could I add to, Colonel, I think we need to really think even more critically about how the development of a person ought to mean the benefit of the community. So you're speaking to that. Students should be registered to vote because they should learn that they have an allegiance to and an obligation to community.
Exactly.
And, you know, and the other thing is, I will never get over the fact that St. Paul College
is
closed.
Yes.
I would never accept that.
That's for sure. I agree with you on that one.
Created by the community, out of, you know, Bishop Russell. Helped to create the community. I'm sorry, and school 1888 for 125 years was a beacon on Route 58.
Exactly.
Closed. And what is so mind-boggling is we have accepted it.
Exactly.
We have that beautiful campus. So you know, an institution that we've birthed, that we've grown, that we've nurtured. So you know, we can talk about Knoxville College. We can talk about Morris Brown College. But I'm talking about Virginia. So I just think that there's not been the critical, hard conversation about the relationship that HBCUs should have with the community, what that looks like, and why in the world is St. Paul's College still closed?
Exactly.
Well, you know what?
Great, Colonel.
You know, that was a policy from a statewide to close it, because you remember the last president or the overseer that they put in was and I say this after watching Bobby Scott, and the person was running against him, and I guess his name is Stephen.
We don't want to call his name anyway. We won't call his name.
I just call him his name.
Okay, Stephen. I like Stephen.
Look at Stephen in the movie Django.
I like Stephen. I like that. Yeah.
So they had another Stephen come in there, basically under the auspices. I'm trying to help it out, but he did everything to damage St. Paul, because he was a Republican, and he shut it down.
That's why we have to be vigilant, and we need to see these puppets that they're putting in place. Just because they have the same skin color, it doesn't mean that they're there for our good. And
that's why I call out Stephen.
That's right. That's
And
right.
I watched that
I
over
agree
and
with you.
over. I've watched it a couple times, and I just shake my head.
I think you watched Django maybe 100 times because you always
Yes.
refer to it
Yes.
anyway.
All I have to say is you just can't use Tom anymore. You can't
How
use
about
Uncle
that? Can't
Tom
use
anymore.
Tom. We were
That's
using it
been debunked.
incorrectly. We've been
Yeah.
using it
Uncle
incorrectly for a
Tom
long
turned
time.
out to be a great guy.
He surely did. But that's the importance
I
of
would
knowing
say
history.
analogy.
That's the importance of knowing history,
We have to
James.
know our history.
Exactly.
we have to
Exactly.
we have to control the narrative.
Control the narrative.
People are putting out.
Exactly. I
Yes.
tell you, Dr. Fairfax, I'm ready to come and take your class. You know, can I audit your class now? Is it okay? Do they audit classes anymore, huh? Because I'm ready
Well,
to
you
come.
know, again, why don't HBCUs ensure that there's a percentage of people from the community who can audit a class? Remember,
Exactly.
the whole reason why HBCUs were birthed was so that not only we could get a degree, but in order to be able to reach our potential and then to raise up the potentiality of the community, to uplift and build the community. This wasn't just about you getting a degree and then you get a t-shirt on my ancestors' wildest dream. Your ancestors it could care less about your degree. Your ancestors want to know what you're doing with your brothers and your sisters. And I'm saying that we got it wrong. That I am saying it. It is about community. It is about transformation. It is about the resistance posture we need to be in every day. And so, as we continue to move along in history, I am very concerned, yes, where I don't see that the closeness that once existed. Growing up on the campus of Virginia Union University, Martin Luther King Day was there would be hundreds of people, gathered not just to be in worship, but to also be in discussions about what needs to occur in the community. It wasn't just about the march. It was about the discussions and then the implementation of plans. It was about bringing resources back to the community.
And service to the community.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think, HBCUs, sure, I understand the money is in tuition. The money is in who donates. Yes, but I also believe you still must be connected to your base. I am saying.
And Dr. Fairfax, if we don't have an awakening now as a people, we are going to be lost. Now, if you just watch and see daily what's taking place across this nation, we need to wake up, we need to come together, and we need to have a plan. There's no plan, there's no awakening. We just seem to be floating out here without any understanding. Or even I look at the number of people well, I don't look at the news. Well, you better look at the news just so that you can discern what's happening around the country.
Yeah, one of my mentors, Dr. Daoudi Azibo, who is a gifted African-centered psychologist, coined the term survival fatigue. And he believes that we really are in a moment of survival fatigue. But what we're missing, though, is holding on to the divine.
Exactly.
There's this really strange sense that some of our people believe, that anything religious or spiritual means whiteness.
Exactly.
What are you talking about? African people have always been spiritual and religious before the interruption of enslavement. So what has happened is we decide that, anything that connects us to the divine must be about white. But if you understand anything about Egypt or what was called Kemet, and Kemet is black, that civilization created an understanding and connected the entire civilization to God. So what is missing in our struggle, in our fight, is how we connect with God every day, how we connect with spirit in order to get the righteous work done. If you consider the HBCU, I wrote this down, the Virginia University of Lynchburg in 1886. And they were founded on three principles: self-reliance, racial pride, and faith. That ain't nothing but God.
That's all it is. That's all it is.
And to God, all of the ancestors, the work that they've done, the ladies you read about in my Bible, it was God that gave them that strength. So So the civil rights movement, the movement was a Black evangelical movement. We don't talk about that. But those people believe so much in the power of God that they were willing to, and they did sacrifice everything. And it is because of the Black evangelical movement, which we call the civil rights movement, that created the gains today. So I do think that we are missing the role of the divine in our work. I do.
You know, I got to give props. You mentioned a Lieutenant Colonel, a retired Van.
Yes, my dear friend, Claude Van III. Yes.
Yes, I got to give him props because he stood up for when, and that was the chief nurse executive in Cadet Command, when we had a two-star was running all of Cadet Command, RTC across the country, wanted to cut funds for the HBCU schools and tried to roll Hampton University and Norfolk State up into and put them under ODU. And so Van got a call, an anonymous call from somebody from headquarters. I can't name his name, but he was also a Black colonel. And we sort of squashed that. But see that in policies across the nation now that is happening, with big money and everything. So I'll digress that. But the other piece that I wanted to get across is I've always said we are going to need another civil rights movement.
Amen.
Because our country has come into, there are two, like Senator Edwards that ran for president and was disgraced, talked about two Americas. And there are two Americas. And actually there's three Americas. And because that third one is for Black and Brown America, is in that subset there. And we have so we have a bunch of states out here where we have free states and slave states. And say when they struck down the abortion rights, it put women in those slave states, which are red states, turn them into slaves because they have no more choice over their bodies. And so if you look at it in that context, and when I say that, the reason they struck it down is because it was an assault on the right of privacy. And so when we look at the right of privacy for those young folks out there, you can see what's next. Exactly. You can look at our history in the state of Virginia, Loving versus state of Virginia.
Yes.
That is on the ticket because they want to strike that down. And that's interracial marriages.
That's right. That's right. And Clarence Thomas didn't touch on that one, though, did he?
Yeah.
He left that one alone.
They may not touch on that because not only Clarence Thomas, but now you got Ketanji Brown Jackson. So
true. Hey, that's right. You know what? You're right about that.
But they'll make some kind of grandfather clause in there, but they want to go after. Yeah. So, but all those First Amendment, those rights of privacy, like Griswold versus state of versus Connecticut, right for contraception. That's on Blackburn, Senator Blackburn from Tennessee says they want to look at that. They want to take away the right of privacy and contraception. And we can go on and on for same-sex marriage and other rights that people have, we've enjoyed over the years. And so everything is on the ballot. And so we have to have another civil rights movement, and it's just not Black and brown people, but poor whites got to join in there because they are being just thrown away because, and they vote against their own self-interest anyway.
Yeah, but they don't think they're part of the group, Colonel.
Yes.
Yeah.
They don't think they're part of the group.
Dr. Fairfax, and I don't know if we'll get the same white folks in a civil rights movement like we had back in the 60s days. Yeah. Anyway, Dr. Fairfax, where you're sitting right now, what would a civil rights movement look like today? And could it be effective?
So I think it could take several different forms, sir. I do think what we would probably need to do is to incorporate more study. deep study. And I do think we've got technology now. People have the convenience of accessing information in their homes. I think deep study is required. So very, very different from our elders who laid their lives on the line during the movement. They were very clear about who they were. They were clear about their blackness. They were clear about their God. They were clear about their rights to be a citizen in this country. They were clear. They were unequivocally clear. They were clear about their relationship with the community. So it wasn't about integration. It was about rights as a human being and as citizens. I do think that we need, in this day and time, sir, a movement of deep study. I'm not talking about study of theories. I'm talking about a deep study about who we are, And I also think there's got to be a study of our traditions, a study of our families, the traditions of our extended families, the traditions of our social institutions, of our Masons, of our Eastern Star, of those strong beneficial organizations. I think there has to be a deep study of the role of churches. I think there has to be a deep study then of this thing called protest. Voting is a form of protest. I think we need to use that kind of language. That your vote is not just for you. Your vote is for community, and it is a sign and a form of protest. And guess what? On the same day when we vote, everybody's equal. That means you're equal to a billionaire. Exactly. Because he or she only has one vote. So I think we need to package our movement in a way that will appeal to the sensibilities of our 21st century babies. And I also think we've got to really get in their heads about relationships, about themselves and their self-image, because the power of television, the power of capitalism is in the minds of our babies. And so instead of dogging them, we've got to say, I've got some other information for you. I've got some other ways in which I want you to know yourself.
Right.
You're that beautiful. So I do think we have to repackage it. So what I'm saying, Mr. Overton, is it's got to be a movement, not only virtual, but then a movement locally. Because the other thing is, locally, our cities function very strange.
Who you telling?
Stop! Don't take me there. Don't take me there. Don't take me there, Doc.
Don't get me started.
That's another show.
Yes, I know it's another show. It's another show. I know, Doc. But so real quickly, the theater in the national stage politically is just so irrational. That takes up so much time because you see whiteness and white supremacy playing out just in your face, and so you just get drawn into that theater. What we need to do is make sure that as we have the virtual movement, we gotta have the local movement, and we educate people about what is happening locally in their own front door. We've got to educate people about how powerful city managers are. People think people on city council are powerful. Oh, it is the city manager that holds the purse strings.
But they don't know the roles that these individuals play. They don't have a clue.
And not only that, we have people who come out of nowhere, want to run for city council. They haven't read now one local history book. They're not a part of institutions in the community. They're not a part of anything. They just want to, they've not done any community work, volunteer work. Nobody knows who these Negroes are. And they just want to come up and run for city council. They get on city council and they don't know anything. And they're not accountable to community. So I do think that the Renaissance should be virtual, but I also think it has to be locally. And because once you begin to talk to people about their own front doors, it will really resonate with them.
And people just have to get real with the information they take in. We have a show like this, and somebody else can have a show that's they mix in untruths and comedy or whatever. But and so it's confusing. Is the news real? But it's entertainment, and people gravitate towards that rather than a show like this that's really giving you facts or presenting, guests that are knowledgeable on subjects and that are saying something.
But they want to be entertained. They don't want their mind stimulated. All they want is the entertainment piece of it.
Yeah, they want the show.
Yes,
and it's room for that. It's room for the entertainment. We need that. But you have to be able to know the difference between entertainment and when someone is trying to educate you.
But James, they've been caught up so much into this falsehood of what they're watching on TV, trying to be an Atlanta housewife, trying to be these folks that they see on TV, that they can't even grasp what's really going on around them because they're living in a fictitious world.
Yeah, but part of that is socialization, though.
It is.
It's our responsibility to socialize our young people to understand they must see their place in the struggle. We are still in struggle. Doesn't mean you're gonna die tomorrow, but we're just still in struggle. And understand your role, your significant and important role in struggle, and that you're needed in struggle. And we've got to find different ways to get that to them. And I think HBCUs can do that well if other experts in localities will understand and see HBCU professors not only as professors but as experts. It's inexcusable that Norfolk school system doesn't reach out more to the School of Education at NSU, because the issue is, how do you educate impoverished Black children? Well, I mean, you've had Black educational scientists who've written about that for decades.
Exactly.
Who know how to do that work. Listen, poverty could be closed in the city of Norfolk if Black elected officials reached out to those of us in the School of Social Work, reached out to those of us in the School of Business, because we have studied poverty and we have studied ways in which it can be eliminated. But it is by design to support people who do not bring the values of the community and who are individualistic.
Exactly.
And some of the people that can make those decisions, to include your professor, on Portsmouth Coffee Talk, we advocate that all the time because we've had some brilliant people over here, President Company included. And we always advocate, look, use these professors out of these universities. Why go to Arizona? To get somebody that's at Norfolk State studying human behavior. I say this all the time. And a lot of times the people that can make those decisions came from HBCUs.
Exactly.
And should know the value of it. But, I don't know. We just have to keep pushing for it and making sure that they're aware that.
And you all are doing that. Listen, we all grew up where the local radio station was the heartbeat of the community.
That's for sure.
This is a 21st century radio station. So this is a part of the struggle, and I do hope you all will continue this righteous work. I do.
Yeah. We will.
You know what? I know, James, I know we're winding down, but Dr. Fairfax, we really have to get you back because you didn't hit anything you hit a lot where my heart is. But I wanted to talk about some of these women. So we have to have you back so we can talk about some of these women, and they can understand who these trailblazers were and what they've given to us, to society, I mean, people lived in Alabama. They don't even know who Alabama was, all they thought was a housing community.
I know.
So, I mean, there's so much information that we need to get out here to the public so they can be knowledgeable as to, where you are, who is this lady? Where's Alabama preschool named Alabama? I don't know. It's called Alabama. It come from the community. That's not where it came from. So
you also have to talk about the order of the tents. I mean, people don't know about that. That's very powerful. And I knew when you were coming on, I knew it was going to be a part 1 and part 2. I said, there's no way. Might even be a part 3. No way we can get in.
James.
Not to make her a regular.
It is my honor because you all are doing important work. You're speaking truth to power. This is important work, and this is a part of the movement. It is a part of it, yeah. And so I'm honored to have a discussion about our people. Cornel West said it best. You can't lead the people if you don't love the people.
Exactly.
So you can't save the people if you don't serve the people.
Exactly.
This is service. This is service.
You know, one day, my idea would be to bring on all the professors we have from Norfolk State, like Dr. Duncan,
My
Dr.
friend.
Cassandra Newby,
My friend.
and some more. Who else? But just bring them on as a panel and have a big discussion. Can you
That would have to
imagine?
be a 3-hour discussion.
Oh,
It's gonna have to be. It's gonna have to be planned and well put out there and taking breaks and
add
all
Dr.
that stuff.
Robert Perkins, my boy, Dr. Robert Perkins
Yeah.
in sociology. Oh yes, add him. Yes.
I mean, and I'm serious about that because I think it'll be a panel that a lot of people would benefit from because it'd be coming from all different areas of concern, especially in our Black community. So
That's
we
right.
appreciate that. So as we wind down
are we winding
and
down? Do we have to wind down, James?
we have to wind down now. We can't, have to keep it to an hour. We're going past an hour a little bit, but we're going to schedule a part 2 as soon as Dr. Fairfax schedule allows. We'll do it again, and hopefully it's soon. And we want to thank you for coming on, agreeing to come on. And I think we started talking about it in May, I think, sometime. And we just lost track, and then we picked it back up. So I'm glad we did that. So
Me too.
appreciate it. So unless there were any other last word comments from our hosts, and we'll give Dr. Fairfax the last word.
I'm just waiting for the section on these women. I'm really waiting for that. But I tell you what, I hope that you find out if your class can be audited, because I would surely like to sit in on some of your classes, to be perfectly honest with you. Because I'm a true believer in our knowing our history, learning our history the correct way. I know I've said it here before, but in 1997, when I went to Africa, a chief gave me a replica of a Sankofa bird. He told me to bring it back. He said, because you need to teach your children their history. So I've been engaged in trying to work with these kids in the community, teaching them their history. And I see it now. And I wanted to wind down, really, because I've been doing it for over 25 years. I really wanted to wind down. But as I see what's taking place with the revisionists, as far as our history is concerned, I know it's even more necessary now that we continue to help these children to understand who they are, where they're from, and whose they are. And so I'm just delighted. I really got to really get into that 1619 project and and really see what's been taking place. I encourage those who are out here, who are listening, who are watching, to read, study these things, and see what role you can play in helping to making our society a better place. Because we all have a role to play. We're not all going to be leaders, because if it were not for those who helped behind the scenes with the march across the Pettus Bridge, many of them would not have been a part of the movement, So you got to talk about those individuals who worked in the background, who don't get the glory, but they did the job. So it's important for us to really realize what our roles are and to come together, bring those roles together so that we can make our community a better place in which to live. And I just thank you so very, very much. This has been a joy. I'm glad you gave me a few minutes before the guys came on so we could have our little girl talk before they came on.
Snap.
But it has been, I mean, you.
That's why I came on late. That's why I came. I knew that was going to happen.
Look, and as old as I am, you making me want to do more and more and more. You're giving me ideas of things I need to be doing myself. So I just thank you. I thank you so very much.
It is my honor, truly my honor.
Well, yes, and there's not much I could say because Leah has said it all. And she is the best articulation of everything I would want to say. But I've always had a certain kinship with the School of Social Work because one, back in the old days when I was a student there, the Department of Nursing was up on the second floor and social work was on the the bottom floor in that one building. I can't think of the name of the building. Was back in the
Water Hall.
Yeah, and so that was way back. I'm not even gonna tell what decade that was, but that was back in the day. So there's always that kinship there, and so. But I will say that the School of Social Work is probably one of the better ones in this country.
Exactly.
And well recognized across the country. And having said that, and because I had led a recruiting effort, I spent 9 years in recruiting, you know, for the Army on healthcare, and always tried to get ours come back to HBCU schools. And whenever I lectured out there, I always talked about Norfolk State and the Spartans and what we have to offer, just not to the Army, but what we have to offer to this country.
Might I add that the founding dean of the School of Social Work, Dr. Ethelyn R. Strong,
I was going to say that.
She was my church member. She was my church member.
She was a P-Town girl.
Yes, she was.
Yeah.
Yes, she was.
And her son sat on the basketball bench with me.
Oh my gosh. And might I also add that Dr. Ethelyn R. Strong, when she was developing as a community developer and social worker, she apprenticed under Janie Porter Barrett, one of the ladies I studied. So again, you know, we've got to connect our people to their intellectual genealogy. And that's a part of the new wave movement, Mr. Overton, that I'm speaking about.
Okay.
And Dr. Fairfax, if I get this thing going that I have in my head for these girls, I'm going to need you to come and share that knowledge, you know. But
I would love to do it.
You got to drop that knowledge on these young girls about these women.
I would love to do
these women.
I would love to do it.
Yes.
I would love to come and love up on them.
Yes, yes.
It's going to happen. Well, thanks again. And I want to warn everybody, watch out for the man. But Portsmouth Coffee Talk is here for our voice,
our community,
in our future.
And we salute you, Doctor.
Yes, we do. Thank you so very much.
And thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you Monday. By the way, Monday our guest will be Sabrina Brown, and she is a local girl, and she has a social media show platform called Girlfriend's Tea. And you want to be here Monday morning to see what she has to say. She's been around. She started out at the same radio station with me, with Carlos Howard, but now she's branched off, and you know, so I'm excited to have her here. You know, fit into her schedule. You know, her busy social media schedule, and she's agreed to come on and talk to us. So stay tuned. Monday morning, 6:30 a.m.
Thank you.
Portsmouth Coffee Talk. All right, thank you.
Dr. Fairfax. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
BUU.
Behold the green and gold.
All right, everybody. Thanks.
All right.
James, you've been dropping us real early here lately. I don't know what's going on with you, but lately you're the first one to get off the air here. I don't understand this.
Sometimes